The wind sounded like rails used to, long, low, lonely, the kind of sound that makes you think of distance. Mara Lawson heard it through the cracked windshield as she sat in her parked car by the edge of the rail yard, watching freight trains roll past in slow, endless procession. Each one felt like a reminder of movement she no longer had. The car heater had died last week, her job 2 months before that. She was running on caffeine, grit, and the stubborn pulse that tells you you're not done yet, even when the world says otherwise. Her dog, Jasper, a mottled shepherd mix with patient amber eyes, rested his head on her knee. "You and me both," she murmured. His tail thumped once, soft as punctuation. She'd been scrolling through classified ads all night, the kind of desperate scroll that begins with jobs and ends with odd properties. Somewhere between used farm equipment and vintage soda machines, a listing had caught her attention. Old train car, as is, condition, $200 or best offer, must haul away, located off County Road 9. She stared at it for a long time. There was something absurd about it, like buying a piece of history for less than a week's rent. But the longer she looked, the more the idea settled inside her. A train car was at least made to move, to go somewhere. Maybe that was what she needed. A place that once knew motion, even if it had forgotten how. 2 days later, she found it. The seller, a farmer named Denny, met her on a muddy dirt track near the woods. "Been sitting here since my granddad's time," he said, spitting into the snow. "No wheels left, just a shell, really. Some folks use 'em for storage. You got a truck?" "I'll figure it out," Mara said. He shrugged, pocketed her $200 in cash, and left her standing in front of the relic. The train car sat half buried in weeds, its red paint flaking into rust. The logo was barely visible beneath decades of grime. Midland and Western Railway Co., a company that, according to memory, hadn't existed since the 1950s. The door was jammed but yielded after she leaned her shoulder into it. Wood splintering, metal groaning like it had been waiting for permission. Inside was shadow and dust. The air smelled of oil, iron, and old secrets. She clicked on her flashlight. Wooden crates lined one wall, their corners chewed by time. A bench sat bolted to the floor, a thermos still resting on it like someone had left for a smoke break 70 years ago and never came back. Jasper sniffed every corner with deliberate care, nose twitching. His tail froze mid-swing, then pointed like a compass toward the far end of the car. "What is it?" Mara asked. He barked once, a sharp, certain sound, and pawed at the floor. Mara knelt beside him. The boards there looked newer, paler than the rest, almost as if someone had replaced them years after the rest of the car was abandoned. She tapped them with the flashlight handle. Hollow. Her heart started to beat faster. She ran her fingers along the seam until she found a gap. A few minutes with a screwdriver and some determined pulling later, one of the planks came loose, revealing a shallow compartment beneath. Inside lay a metal box, about the size of a briefcase, painted army green. A number was stenciled on the lid, Shaker 47, MEW 1947. "Midland and Western, huh?" she whispered. "You've been keeping secrets." The latch was rusted shut, so she took it back to the car and worked at it with a hammer and a rock, until it gave with a shriek of metal. Inside were papers, dozens of them, ledgers, blueprints, telegrams, carefully stacked, remarkably preserved. On top sat a folded letter sealed with wax, the emblem barely visible, a winged wheel. She unfolded it slowly. The ink had faded but was legible. To whomever finds this car was never meant to reach its destination. The records within document Project Larkspur. If the world still remembers the Midland and Western, know this. History has been rewritten to hide what truly happened along the line between St. Cloud and Moline. No signature, no date. Mara exhaled, breath visible in the cold air. Project Larkspur, she repeated. What the hell were you? Jasper whined softly, leaning against her leg. She spent hours that night reading by flashlight, fingers stiff with cold but unwilling to stop. The documents told a story both fascinating and terrifying. In 1947, the Midland and Western Railway had contracted with the federal government on a civil infrastructure study. But these papers described something else entirely. An experimental rail car built to carry and conceal something of immense value, referred to only as the archive. One memo mentioned historical preservation under secrecy. Another spoke of cultural continuity transport. The language was bureaucratic, but the undertone was clear. They were moving something big, something the government didn't want anyone to know existed. And then, in late 1948, the trail stopped. The project was terminated, records sealed, property liquidated. Except this car. It had vanished. Mara looked up from the pages. Outside, the forest loomed dark and quiet, the wind lowing through the empty siding like a voice remembering. For the first time in years, she felt something close to purpose. She didn't know why this was here or what it meant, but she knew one thing. Whatever Project Larkspur had been, it wasn't supposed to be found, and she had found it. The next morning, she drove into town and parked by the library. The sign, out front, leaned left, the letters half faded. But inside, it was warm and smelled like paper and safety. The librarian, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and the posture of someone who trusted books more than people, looked up when Mara approached. Midland and Western Railway, Mara began. You have archives? Not much, the woman said. Small company, folded into the Great Northern after the war. Why? Mara hesitated. Just following a lead. The woman smiled faintly. Follow it quietly. The past likes to whisper. She returned a few minutes later with a binder labeled Regional Rail 1930-1955. Inside were photographs, steam engines, depots, workers. Then a small clipping caught Mara's eye. Mystery train vanishes en route to Chicago. 1948 Midland and Western car, door 47, en route from St. Cloud to Moline, never arrived. Cargo undisclosed. Company officials declined comment. The date matched the documents. She copied everything, her hands trembling slightly. Outside, Jasper waited in the car, nose pressed to the glass. Snow began to fall again, soft and relentless. Looks like we're on to something, she said when she got in. Jasper barked once in agreement. Back at the site, Mara spent the evening sorting the papers by date. Beneath a folder of blueprints, she found something else. A roll of photographs sealed in wax paper. She unwrapped them carefully and held one up to the flashlight. Black and white images of workers loading something onto a flat car. It was covered by a tarp, but the size and shape were unmistakable. A locomotive engine, except smaller, sleeker, almost aerodynamic, unlike any 1940s design she'd seen. Another photo showed men in suits standing beside it, shaking hands. On the back, a caption, Larkspur Test Engine, December 47. The last photograph made her heart stop. It showed a group of soldiers unloading crates stamped with the same winged wheel emblem from her letter into this very car. In the corner, written faintly in pencil, "Keep it moving. They can't destroy what keeps moving." She sat back, pulse racing. The Midland and Western had built an engine meant for something secret, something to move and archive. But what kind of archive could rewrite history? And why hide it in a train car? Jasper suddenly growled, low and uncertain. Mara froze. The sound came again. A crunch outside, footsteps on frozen leaves. She turned off the flashlight. The car went dark. Through the crack in the door, she saw a figure moving near the trees, flashlight beams sweeping the ground. A man in a dark jacket, scanning the area like he was searching for something. Her breath caught. She and Jasper waited, perfectly still. After a long minute, the light moved away, fading into the distance. When she finally exhaled, her lungs hurt. Someone else was looking for this place, and she had no idea why. She barely slept. Every sound outside became a reason to sit up, listening. But dawn came quietly, and no one returned. Mara packed the documents into a duffel bag, locking the box back under the floor. She didn't know who to trust, but she knew she couldn't just walk away. By mid-morning, she drove to a local historian's office in town. A small brass plaque read, "Dr. Andrew Keene, Historical Research Services." Inside, the walls were lined with maps, framed timetables, and faded railroad posters. Keene looked up from his desk, eyes sharp behind rimless glasses. "Can I help you?" Mara hesitated, then said, "What do you know about the Midland and Western?" His brows lifted. "Ah, the ghost line. Not much left of it but rumor. Why do you ask?" "Because I found one of their cars." That got his attention. "You're joking." She wasn't. She told him about the listing, the car, the letter. She didn't mention the man in the woods or exactly where she'd found it, but she showed him one of the blueprints she copied. He leaned in, adjusting his glasses. This can't be right. This design predates the Burlington Zephyr by years. Look here, these fuel lines, these aerodynamics. This was advanced even for the 60s. If this is real, the Midland and Western may have built the first prototype of an independent electric engine. He looked up. "Where did you say you found this?" "I didn't," she said. Keene smiled faintly. "Smart woman?" He sat back. "You might have stumbled onto the missing piece of the Larkspur Route legend." "The what?" He gestured toward an old map on the wall. They called it that because it was supposed to be the most efficient passenger line in America. St. Cloud to Moline in under 4 hours. But the project died in '48. Rumors said sabotage. Others said government intervention. Nobody ever found the final train car. He paused. Until now, maybe. Mara felt the weight of it then, the enormity of what she was sitting on. Why would anyone hide something like that? Because if the Midland and Western really cracked early electric rail, it would have changed everything, Keene said. Oil, war, industry, the patents alone, billions. But if it disappeared quietly, history stays the same, Mara finished. He nodded. Exactly. Mara stood. Thank you. Be careful, he said quietly. The past doesn't like to be unearthed. Outside, the wind picked up again, whispering along the tracks like it had something left to say. Jasper sat in the passenger seat, watching her through the window, tail thumping once. Mara started the engine. All right, boy, she said. Looks like we just woke something up. As the car pulled away, Snow began to fall again. Thick, slow, deliberate. Behind her, somewhere in the trees, a figure watched the road until the taillights vanished into white. The next week passed in fragments. Mara drove between town and the rail yard like a ghost retracing her own footsteps. Every night, she locked herself and Jasper inside the train car, the duffel of documents under her arm as she slept. The air smelled of iron and thawing wood. The sound of distant freight trains rolled across the horizon like thunder too tired to strike. She kept thinking about what Dr. Keene had said. An early electric engine. Patents. Billions. History rewritten. But it wasn't just about the invention. Someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to bury the Larkspur project, and that meant whatever was inside this car was more than mechanical. It was political, maybe even personal. By the fourth night, she couldn't sleep. She sat on the floor, flipping through the papers again, Jasper's slow breathing beside her. One blueprint caught her eye, an outline labeled Car Nagra 47, Archive Compartment, Phase 2. The drawing showed a hidden storage cavity behind the bulkhead wall at the far end of the car, reinforced with steel. She looked up at the wall now, its surface dented and rusted. "Jasper," she whispered, "I think there's something behind that." The dog lifted his head, ears twitching. She stood, grabbed her crowbar, and started prying. The first blow echoed like a gunshot in the stillness. Rust rained down. A panel came loose, revealing another behind it, this one smoother, sealed tight. After another few hits, the metal split with a shriek. Behind the wall was a cavity about 3 feet deep, packed with straw, cloth, and something wrapped in oilskin. She reached in carefully. Her fingers brushed metal, cool, smooth, intricate. When she pulled the cloth back, she froze. It wasn't just a piece of machinery. It was a miniature engine, no larger than a generator, with copper wiring wound through crystal-like glass tubes. On the side was a brass plate engraved with words that sent a chill through her spine. Larkspur Engine Prototype, Version 1, Electric Self-Contained Propulsion Unit, property of the Midland and Western Research Division, 1947. She whispered, "My God." The engine was pristine, untouched by corrosion, like it had waited for her. Jasper barked once, sharp, alert. Outside, the crunch of tires on gravel broke the quiet. Mara killed her flashlight. A truck door slammed. Voices. 2 of them. Male. "It's this way." The listing said County Road 9, end of the track. Her pulse hammered. She stuffed the engine back into the cavity and replaced the panel as best she could, heart racing. Jasper pressed against her leg, silent now, sensing danger. The voices grew closer. A flashlight beam sliced through the cracks of the train car door. "Looks like someone's been here." The handle rattled. Locked. A pause, then a muttered curse. "Get the crowbar," one of them said. Mara grabbed her keys and the duffel. "Go," she whispered. She pushed open the rear hatch and dropped into the snow, landing hard, Jasper beside her. They sprinted toward the trees, her breath tearing through the cold air. Behind them, the sound of metal bending, a door giving way. She didn't stop running until the forest swallowed them whole. They spent the night in her car by the roadside, engine off, breath visible. Jasper curled beside her, a silent guardian. Mara's hands still shook when she tried to drink coffee from a thermos. Who were they? Collectors? Government? Descendants of the Midland and Western executives who had something to lose? At dawn, she drove straight to Dr. Keene's office. He was unlocking the door when she arrived, startled by her urgency. "They found it?" she said. "Two men. They knew exactly where to look." Keene frowned. "Slow down. Who found what?" "The train car. They were breaking in when I left." He motioned her inside. "You brought the documents?" She nodded, dropping the duffel on his desk. He rifled through the papers, his brow furrowing deeper with each page. This is extraordinary. These aren't just blueprints. Look here. Magneto-propulsion stabilization. This predates linear induction patents by 15 years. If authentic, it means Midland and Western developed early maglev concepts before Japan, before anyone. He looked up. This could rewrite technological history. And someone doesn't want that, Mara said. Keene hesitated, then reached for his phone. "We'll need to authenticate it. A historian in Chicago, Ellen Strauss. She's the foremost expert on early electric rail. If we get these scanned and verified, no one can bury it again." Mara nodded slowly. "Then let's do it." They worked for 2 days straight. Keene's small office became a command center of history. Papers drying under lamps, maps taped to walls, scanned documents flickering across his monitor. Jasper slept under the desk, occasionally lifting his head when the printer whirred. On the second night, as snow fell outside in slow, hypnotic sheets, Keene looked up from the screen. "Mara, come see this." He zoomed in on a scanned memo. It was from 1948, signed by a Director L. Hammond of the Department of Transportation Liaison Office. The Larkspur Project's success poses substantial threat to existing energy markets. Recommend full recall of prototypes. All physical evidence to be secured under Operation Redwood. Any remaining assets, including personnel, are to be reassigned under civilian cover. He sat back. There it is, proof of suppression. The government buried this to protect oil and industrial lobbies after the war. Mara stared at the words, heart pounding. So, they erased a whole invention? And the man who made it? Keene said quietly. "There's a name here. Thomas R. Larkspur. Looks like he was Midland's chief engineer. But after 1949, nothing. No death record, no family. Just gone." Mara whispered. "Maybe he hid it here himself." Keene nodded. "He must have known they'd come for it. Hid the prototype in Corridor 47, buried the trail. He saved it for someone to find." Mara glanced toward the duffel. "Then it's been waiting 70 years. Keene rubbed his temple. "If we release this, it's going to cause a storm. The press, the corporations, everyone will want a piece. Are you ready for that?" She looked at him, tired but resolute. "I got nothing left to lose." They drove to Chicago 2 days later. The highway shimmered with cold rain. At a rest, stop. Mara walked Jasper while Keene called ahead to confirm with Ellen Strauss's university lab. When they arrived, Ellen, short, sharp-eyed, wearing a cardigan that smelled faintly of coffee, examined the documents like sacred scripture. "These aren't forgeries," she said after an hour. "The paper, the ink. Everything dates correctly. And this schematic. This is the missing link between early diesel and modern maglev systems. If this goes public, it'll change how we understand mid-century engineering." She turned to Mara. "Where did you say you found this?" Mara hesitated. "A forgotten train car." Ellen studied her for a moment, then simply said, "Then thank you for not walking away." They spent the night at a small motel off the interstate. Rain drummed against the windows. Jasper slept by the door, ears twitching. Mara lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Her life had been so small for so long, narrowed to survival. Now, she was holding a story bigger than herself, a truth that could ripple across decades. But fear lingered. Whoever had come to that train car wouldn't stop just because she'd left. She sat up, instinct prickling. Jasper was already awake, head up, growling low. Then, a thump outside the door. Mara's breath caught. She crept to the window and peeked through the curtain. A black SUV idled by the curb, headlights off. Two silhouettes sat inside. She grabbed her phone, dialed Keen. He answered on the second ring, groggy. "Andrew?" she whispered. "They're here." "Who?" "The men from before." "I'm sure of it." He exhaled hard. "Okay, don't panic. I'll call Strauss, tell her to contact campus security. Stay where you are." A knock on the door. Mara froze. The second knock was firmer. "Miss Lawson," a voice called, calm, official. "We need to ask you a few questions." Jasper growled louder. Mara backed away, heart hammering. "What do you want?" "Those materials belong to the Department of Transportation archives," the man said. "You're in possession of classified government property." Classified. The word burned through her chest. "Not anymore," she said quietly. She grabbed the duffel, pushed open the bathroom window, and slipped out into the rain. Jasper followed in one smooth leap. They ran behind the motel, her boots slapping through puddles. Headlights swept the alley behind them, voices shouting. They didn't stop until they reached Keen's rental car parked by the corner. "Drive," she gasped as he opened the door. They sped into the night, taillights vanishing into the rain. By morning, they'd crossed the state line into Iowa. The storm had cleared, leaving a pale sun and a world washed clean. "We can't outrun this forever," Keen said quietly. "I'm not trying to," Mara said. "I'm finishing it." She called Ellen. "Can you protect the documents?" "Yes," Ellen said. "We've already scanned everything. Digital copies stored on multiple servers. Even if they take them, the information's out." Mara exhaled, relief mixing with exhaustion. "Then it's safe." "But what about you?" Ellen asked. "I'll be fine," she said, though her voice shook a little. "There's one more thing I need to do." They drove back to the rail yard. The train car looked smaller in daylight, humbler. Snow had melted around its base, leaving dark, wet earth. It had always been a shelter for her, first from cold, then from despair. Now, it was a vault of history, about to become a memorial. She climbed inside one last time. The panel she'd pried open still hung loose. The prototype engine gleamed softly in the filtered light. She ran her hand over the brass plate. "Thomas R. Larkspur," she said quietly. "You built something the world wasn't ready for, but now it will be." She turned to Keen. "Take it to the university. Let them display it. Let people see what he did." He nodded. "You sure?" Mara smiled faintly. "I think it was never meant to belong to anyone. It was meant to move again." They loaded the prototype carefully into the car. Jasper watched from the doorway, tail low, as if understanding the goodbye. Mara took one last look around the train car, the dust motes, the faint smell of oil, the echo of time itself. Then she stepped outside. Weeks later, headlines began appearing online. "Lost 1947 electric engine. Found. Rewrites history of modern rail. Project Larkspur. Discovery shocks historians. Woman and dog uncover 70-year-old secret in abandoned train car. Ellen's team verified every document. The Smithsonian reached out. A museum exhibition was announced. The Larkspur engine would be restored and displayed, its technology studied anew. Mara declined interviews. She didn't want fame. She wanted peace. With the sale proceeds from the discovery and a small grant from the Historical Society, she bought a tiny cabin near the old rail line. It wasn't much, but it was hers. She painted the walls pale blue, like morning sky, and built Jasper a bed by the window. Every few days, freight trains still passed in the distance. Each whistle carried a memory, a promise of motion, of things lost and found again. One evening, she walked down to the track. The wind was gentle. The air smelled like spring rust and possibility. She knelt beside Jasper and watched the sun drop behind the trees. "We did it, boy," she whispered. "We made something move again." The dog pressed his head against her hand, warm and steady. A faint hum rose in the distance, the sound of an approaching train. She closed her eyes as it grew louder, deeper, until it roared past like a heartbeat rediscovered. In that moment, the world felt connected again. Past and present, metal and blood, history and hope. When the sound faded, the silence that followed didn't feel empty. It felt alive. Mara stood, brushing frost from her coat. "Come on, Jasper," she said. "Let's go home." And behind them, far down the line, where steel met horizon, the rails glowed in the last light of day, shining not with nostalgia, but with renewal.